the developing countries were expecting that the new collective quantified goal, this will be at least crossing $1 trillion or touching $1 trillion. But the new figure that has been proposed of 455 to 585 billion dollars per annum is actually much less than half of the minimum target. One of the main points of this COP29, the Conference of Parties of 29 Conference of Parties of UNFCCC, there are two main issues. One basically focuses on fossil fuel phase out language in the text, but the primary demand of most of the developing countries basically was the climate finance goal, which is much more realistic, which takes into context what is happening in the world today as a result of huge number of climate extreme events, the adaptation needs, and the needs for developing economies to transition away from fossil fuels. Because none of the poorer developing countries, except the top ones like China and possibly to an extent India, Mexico like this, most of the developing countries will need financial assistance even for transitioning away from fossil fuels. The second big finance needs is for adaptation. There are huge number of impacts which are happening on farmers, on fish workers, on hawkers, on construction workers, for all kind of sectors. So we need large amount of adaptation finance support also, along with support for transitioning away. And this do not take care of the loss and damage fund, which is a separate issue. What impacts and what losses communities and countries are already, societies are already having because of the climate extreme events. And all of us know Cancun COP, that is COP16 and 2010, arbitrary figure of $100 billion per year to be given from 2020 was brought in. It was just brought in from the magic box and thrown to the developing countries that this will be the climate finance goal, that's $100 billion per year. Even that has not been really achieved even till very recently. What the developed countries claim that they have achieved that in 2022, but even that is contested. But going much beyond that, there are assessments even by the UNFCCC bodies, which says the present financing needs go to $3 to $5 trillion per year. And out of that, adaptation needs are also crossing $1 trillion per year by official estimates. Many other estimates do exist. I will not go into multiple estimates. So in this context, one of the primary demand of all the developing countries, it started in the Sharm el-Sheikh COP27. It intensified because the loss and damage fund was at least acknowledged and started with a nominal fund of less than $700 million. But the new goal for climate finance, instead of the $100 billion goal, was to be achieved or arrived at this year in this COP29. And that was the primary purpose of this COP29, along with some kind of text to be taken up in the fossil fuel phase-out law. Today, the draft text, of course, this is not the final text. The draft text has been released of that committee. And this again speaks of very, very low figure in today's content. Because if you think of 100 billion in 2009-10, today, the draft text talks about around 455 to $585 billion per year. And that includes both the assistance for transitioning away and adaptation need. Whereas the demand and assessments were in the trillions. And if I can compare this figure, even the International Energy Agency and IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Development Agency, if you look at their estimate, they are saying you need to invest a total amount of $6 trillion at least every year in renewable energy to have safe chance of transitioning away in more or less reasonable time. Whereas today we are investing around $1.2 to $1.3 trillion. So even there is a gap of $4.7 trillion just on renewable energy investment. And this do not include the adaptation finance. And adaptation finance is again well over $1 trillion every year. In fact, last few years, the losses, total losses, even the insured losses have gone over $600 to $800 billion every year. If you look at the $100 billion climate extremes, every year there are multiple $100 billion climate extremes. So looking at all this, events, all these estimates, all these official estimates, nothing is actually anywhere near the demand or the need. So based on that, the developing countries were expecting that the new collective quantified goal, this will be at least crossing $1 trillion or touching $1 trillion. But the new figure that has been proposed of 455 to 585 billion dollars per annum is actually much less than half of the minimum target. That is your floor line. So we have not even reached the floor line. We are roughly at the half of the floor line. So I think there will be a lot of contentious discussions on this because this is the draft. It's not final. Developing countries are not going to accept this abysmally low figure anymore. So there will be back and forth, and the idea or the expectation that this COP29 will come out with a final figure for the NCQG, new collective quantified goal for climate finance. I think the chances have gotten dimmer because of this measly figure of 455 to 580 billion dollars per year. And even then, the developing countries are also asking that what is that guarantee? Because even the $100 billion has not been reached properly. So one, you are giving a measly figure. Second, you are not also clarifying what are the mechanisms to guarantee and to verify that this much is given. But there is a possibility that the powerful developed countries will steamroll the process, possible. But there are a lot of counter voices and try to arrive at some figure which is a little higher than $585 billion per year, which is their higher figure.